Only us, only Homo sapiens, can talk about things that don't exist at all, anywhere, except in our own imagination, in the stories that we invented. The easiest example to give is, of course, religion, but it's not just religion. It's the same with our legal system, with our political system, with our economic system. Money is also just a story. Chimpanzees and dolphins and wolves, none of them man uses money. None of them, they can exchange things. I give you a banana, you give me coconut. But the idea of money, this is something unique to humans because, again, it is based on a story about something that exists only in our imagination. And you tell a story, look, this piece of worthless metal or this piece of colorful paper, it is worth 10 bananas. And if enough people believe that story, then it becomes an extremely effective story.
What is money? We all use money. We need it to buy things. We work hard to earn it. We save it for retirement or a rainy day. We all rely on money. So why don't we know how money works? Why is there sometimes too much of it, making us believe that the good times will never end? Where did all that money come from? And why is there suddenly not enough money around? Why are people struggling to pay their bills? Where did all that money go? The surprising fact is that most of the money in the UK is created by banks. Like a magician, banks make the money appear, seemingly out of nothing, whenever they make loans. But this money is not what it seems. This money is credit and is temporarily on loan from the banks. We use it as money. We believe that it is money. But because it is credit, at some point in the future, it has to be paid back. And when it is paid back, it disappears. This is not a trick. This is how almost all of our money is created and destroyed. So how dependable is this bank-created money that we all rely on?
Really brings us to the crux of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
money is created at will.
And this is finally, we've just had recently a number of central banks finally coming out and saying what non-orthodox economists like myself have been arguing for 40 or 50 years, and that banks create money by double entry bookkeeping. That's all it is to it. First of all, the Bank of England 2014, just a few weeks ago, the Bundesbank, the last bank I would ever expect to come out and say this, came out and said it categorically. Banks do not lend pre-existing money. Banks are not warehouses, they are money factories. They create money and they create debt simultaneously. Now, once you've got that around your head, it's as big a shift, ultimately, as going from that Earth-centric to sun-centric vision of the solar system.
There's a lot of confusion about how banks work and where money comes from. Very few members of the public really understand it. Economics graduates have a slightly better idea, but many university economics courses still teach a model of banking that hasn't applied to the real world for decades.
This is the beautiful thing about the central banks coming out and saying, look, you've got it wrong. There is no such thing as a money multiplier. Banks do not lend reserves. Banks do create money. That flies completely in the face of all the mainstream textbooks, and in particular mainstream advocates like Paul Krugman, who continue pushing this myth in the pages of the New York Times as though it's science. So it's finally the central banks are leading the people's revolution against mainstream economics.
So, well, we've established that the money comes from the banks, and they create, in the UK, 97% of the money supply. It's not the government, it's not even the central bank. The commercial banks are the creators of the money supply. How do they do that? So when someone takes out a loan, the bank simply pretends that the borrower has paid in the money as a deposit, when actually, of course, neither the borrower nor the bank nor anyone else has paid in the money or transferred it to the borrower's account. So what the bank does is it creates a fictitious deposit. And since banks are the accountants and run the settlement system of economic transactions, the accountants of the economy, nobody's able to tell the difference between real deposits and fictitious deposits. And obviously, as we know from aggregate data, the fictitious deposits therefore dominate and are 97% of the money supply.
It's all a fugazi. You know what a fugazi is?
No, Fugazi. It's fake.
Yeah, fugazi. It's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust. It doesn't exist. It's never landed. It is no matter. It's not on the elemental chart. It's not fucking real.
Right.
All right? Stay with me.
Okay, back to the numbers in your bank account. These numbers are all created by banks. The vast majority of these numbers were created when somebody took out a loan from a bank. Let's see how this happens. A customer, who we'll call Robert, walks into a Barclays bank and asks to borrow £10,000 for home improvements. Barclays runs a quick automated credit check and decides that the customer can be relied on to keep up repayments on the loan. The customer signs a loan contract promising to repay the £10,000 plus the interest over the next 4 years, according to an agreed monthly schedule. This loan contract is a legal contract that binds the customer to make repayments to the bank. This means that it is a legal contract that is considered to be worth £10,000 plus the interest. Because it's an asset, Barclays can record the loan on its balance sheet. Now, if you haven't come across a balance sheet before, don't worry, it's pretty simple. There's two parts to a balance sheet. One half records all the things that the bank owns. This could be money, other financial products like bonds and derivatives, bank buildings, computers, and most importantly, the loans it's made. How can you own a loan? Well, if someone signs a contract promising to pay you money, then that contract is worth something. It's considered an asset of the bank. In the case of Robert, the contract that he signs promising to pay the bank £10,000 plus interest over the next few years is worth at least £10,000 to the bank, and therefore it is an asset to the bank. So the bank puts an extra £10,000 on its balance sheet like this. Now, what about the other half of the balance sheet? The other half of the balance is what's called the liabilities. This is a record of everything the bank owes to other people. On this side, you'll find a record of money that the bank has borrowed from other banks or large pension funds. You'll also find all the customers' accounts, because if you remember, the balance of your account is just a number showing what the bank promises to pay you when you ask for your money back. When Robert signed the contract promising to pay the bank £10,000 plus interest over the next few years, he did it because he wanted some money from the bank. So the bank creates a new account for Robert, which is linked to his debit card and just types £10,000 into their computer records. This £10,000 is a liability from the bank to Robert, and it shows up on the other half of the balance sheet. Now, when Robert goes to the cash machine to check his balance, he'll see £10,000, which he didn't have before. All the bank has done to create this new money is type some numbers into an account. It hasn't reduced the balance of anyone else's account, and it hasn't taken any money from some pensioners and moved it into Robert's account. So the process of creating commercial bank money, that's the money that the general public use, is as simple as 1. A customer signing a loan contract, and 2. The bank typing numbers into a new account set up for that customer. This new bank-created money represents new spending power or money in the economy. Robert can now go and spend his money anywhere in the economy using his debit card, checkbook, internet banking, transfers, or even by taking cash out of an ATM.
So we see then that Homo sapiens, in contrast to all the other animals in the world, lives in a dual reality. Other animals, they live inside an objective reality. We humans also live in this reality. We also encounter trees and lions and rivers and mountains, but we also have another reality. In addition to this objective reality, we also live inside a fictional reality, a reality that we invented, that exists only in our imagination, a reality that contains things like nations, which are just the stories that we invented, which contains money, which is populated by gods, which includes things like human rights, which again, it's our invention. And what is amazing about history is not only that humans inhabit this dual reality, the layer of objective reality, and on it another layer of fictional reality. What is really amazing is that over time, fictional reality has become more and more powerful until we reach the situation today when the very survival of trees and rivers and lions and chimpanzees depends on the imaginary stories that Homo sapiens has invented. We are living inside the dreams of mythical entities like the European Union and like Google and like the dollar, which exist nowhere except in these fictional stories. And you can test yourself, you can check for yourself, try to see what are you thinking about, what are you worried about during your day-to-day life. Many people find that they think very little about real things like trees and rivers and lions, and most of the day they are constantly preoccupied by these fictional inventions like money and like nations and like gods and corporations and things like that.